Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I've never had children of my own. When I married my husband, he was a widower with a young daughter, and that's how I became a stepmother. It wasn't easy at first. She was still mourning the loss of her mother, and I worried she'd never fully accept me. But over time, we found our rhythm. I did my best to support her, to be someone she could trust and rely on. When my husband passed away just a few years into our marriage, I made the decision to keep raising her as my own. She had already lost so much, and I couldn't bear to leave her without a parent figure in her life. Though the situation was difficult, I came to love her deeply, as if she were my biological child. She was my family, and I was proud of the bond we had built. She grew up into a bright, strong young woman, and I was there to cheer and support her on every step of the way. By the time she reached adulthood, she was independent, with her own place and a stable job. I felt like I'd done a good job. I helped guide her through the tough years, and now she was standing on her own 2 feet. I was content with the life I had, even though I didn't have my own children. To me, she was my daughter. About a year ago, she started dating a man who seemed like a wonderful match for her. He was polite, thoughtful, and seemed to truly care about her. When she introduced us, I liked him straight away. My stepdaughter also described him as kind and respectful, and it was clear that she felt happy and secure in their relationship, and I was glad to see her with someone who treated her so well. But a few months ago, she came to me with news that shook my world. She told me she had been diagnosed with a terminal illness and had only 6 months left to live. I was devastated. I didn't know how to process it at first. I offered to go with her to appointments, to help in any way I could, but she refused. "I don't want you to see me like that," she said. "Just let me enjoy what little time I have left." I respected her wishes, even though it was painful. I wanted to be there for her, to help her through this, but she insisted on handling it her own way. Not long after, she told me she had one last wish. "I want to get married," she said. She said her boyfriend was deeply religious, and despite they hadn't been together long, she was certain he was the one. "I just want to have that one special day before I go," she said. "I want to feel beautiful, to feel loved, to have all the people I care about around me. Please, can you help me?" I couldn't say no. The thought of her leaving this world without having that dream come true was unbearable. She talked about wanting a grand wedding, an elegant venue, a beautiful gown, a reception filled with flowers and music. I wasn't wealthy, but I couldn't let her go without giving her this. I sold my car, liquidated the modest investments I'd been counting on for my retirement, and put it all in toward her wedding. I booked the venue, hired the caterers, arranged for her dream dress, everything she'd hoped for. Seeing the joy on her face as the plans came together made it all feel worth it. I told myself that this was my gift to her, a final act of love before she left us. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, she grew more emotional. She cried often, thanking me for making her dream come true. I assumed it was the weight of her illness, the bittersweet reality of celebrating while knowing her time was running out. I tried to comfort her as best I could, but there was a part of me that couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The fact that she refused to talk about her illness bothered me very much. I thought maybe I could do something. Maybe I could help if I knew more about it. Still, I pushed those thoughts aside. She was a grown-up woman who was going through so much, and the last thing I wanted to do was question her when she needed my support the most. Then, just days before the wedding, something happened. She had left her purse on the kitchen counter, and it tipped over, spilling some of its contents onto the floor. As I picked them up, I noticed a folded piece of paper. At first, I thought it was a receipt or a note, but when I glanced at it, I realized it was her medical report. My heart started racing as I read it. The report didn't mention any terminal illness. Instead, it stated she was pregnant. I stared at the paper, my mind racing. How could this be true? Was it a mistake? But the more I thought about it, the more things started to make sense. The rush to get married, the emotional outbursts, the lack of any concrete details about her supposed condition. Then I thought, okay, Maybe there are other reports somewhere else. But why she didn't tell me about the baby? When I confronted her, she broke down immediately. She admitted that she wasn't dying. The tears flowed as she explained the real reason behind her urgency. "It's not my boyfriend's baby," she sobbed. We've never slept together. He's very religious and believes in waiting until marriage. I thought that if I rushed the wedding, we could have our first night together as husband and wife, and then I'd tell him I was pregnant. He would think it was his child." Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All the money, all the sacrifices, all the emotional turmoil. It had been for a lie. She had manipulated me and was planning to deceive her boyfriend. I was furious and heartbroken. I had poured everything into making her final months special. I was crying myself to sleep, thinking I'm going to lose her soon, only to find out she wasn't dying at all. Worse, she was willing to use her boyfriend's trust and his faith to cover up her pregnancy. I couldn't let this continue. I contacted her boyfriend and told him the truth. I explained that she wasn't terminally ill, that she was pregnant, and that the baby wasn't his. He was devastated. He had no idea she was pregnant and was shocked to learn she'd planned to mislead him. The wedding was immediately called off. My stepdaughter was livid. She stopped speaking to me, accusing me of ruining her life. She threatened to terminate the pregnancy, blaming me for exposing her lies. "You've destroyed everything," she screamed during one of her last phone calls. "I never want to see you again." I still don't know if I did the right thing. I loved her like she was my own, and I believed I was giving her the happiest days of her life before she passed. Instead, I uncovered a web of lies and shattered the life she was trying to build. Am I the a-hole for exposing her lies and telling the truth to her boyfriend? I don't think OP is an a-hole here. She lied about being terminally ill and took advantage of OP's generosity. That alone would have been bad enough. But then she also planned to deceive her boyfriend about the pregnancy? OP did the right thing by exposing the truth. Her actions were deeply manipulative and would have caused even more pain down the line if she'd gone through with her plan. I know it's hard, but OP is not the one who ruined her life. She did that herself with her lies. She caused so much pain for OP. She's a selfish human being who thinks only about herself, in my opinion. And now let's see what the community has to say on the matter. Absolutely not the a-hole. You sacrificed so much, your car, your investments, because you believed she was dying. And then to find out it was all a lie? That's a massive betrayal. I feel for her in the sense that she clearly felt desperate. But that doesn't justify lying to you and her boyfriend. Telling him the truth was the only right thing to do. It's heartbreaking, but if you hadn't said anything, he would have been trapped in a marriage built on deceit. You did the hard thing, but it was the right thing. Not the a-hole. This is such a painful situation, but at the end of the day, you did what you had to do. She was ready to deceive her boyfriend into raising a child that wasn't his, all while letting you believe she was on her deathbed. That's not just unfair to you, it's cruel to everyone involved. By telling her boyfriend, you stopped her from making a huge mistake that would have destroyed her relationship and hurt her child in the long run. You acted with integrity, and that's nothing to feel guilty about. I can't believe she would go that far. Not the a-hole. I understand that she must have been scared and confused, but her solution was to manipulate you and her boyfriend, and that's never okay. You gave her everything because you thought she was dying, selling your car and dipping into your investments. And she used your love and trust against you. Telling her boyfriend the truth was the only way to prevent more harm. She may be angry now, but one day, she might realize what you did was the best. Update. Thank you for all your comments and advice. It's been a lot to process, but I wanted to share how things have developed. Despite everything that happened, I reached out to my stepdaughter because I love her and care about her. I told her that while I had to expose the truth, it was never about hurting her. I explained that she can't start a marriage and family on lies. I wanted her to understand that my actions came from a place of love and a belief that honesty is what would ultimately help her move forward. During our conversation, I gently asked who the father of her baby was. She admitted it was the result of a drunken one-night stand. It wasn't easy for her to talk about, and I could tell she felt ashamed and overwhelmed. I reassured her that none of that mattered now. that what mattered was how we moved forward. I told her I would support her through the pregnancy, that she wouldn't have to go through this alone. I encouraged her to focus on her health and the baby's future, and to think about what kind of mother she wanted to be. After a long talk, she thanked me. She told me she decided to keep the baby. I could hear a bit of hope in her voice, which I hadn't heard in a long time. It wasn't an easy road to get to this point, but I feel like we're starting to rebuild the trust we lost. And now, I'm genuinely excited to become a grandma. It's a new chapter for both of us, and I'm committed to being there for her and her child every step of the way. At home, it's me, my husband, our child together, and my stepchildren who live with us 3 nights a week. I've recently inherited a property from my grandmother. My intention is to sell the property and put the majority of the funds away in my son's savings account for when he is older. I discussed this with my grandmother previously, and she said she was happy with that suggestion, although said it was entirely up to me as it was being left solely to me. My grandmother and myself were very close. She was like a mom to me, and she adored my son, so I know she'd be very happy to see him able to maybe buy a house someday or something with this money. My stepchildren are teens and hadn't seen or spoken to my grandmother in many, many years. They weren't close. Understandably, I guess they didn't want to prioritize seeing my family as they got older, and they already have enough family to get around seeing on their mom and my husband's side. They did not consider her a grandmother or even a member of their family, I'd imagine. I have a good relationship with my stepchildren, but I wouldn't call it a mother-to-child type of relationship. Their mom was very hostile at the beginning and didn't want me involved. This rubbed off on the children, I feel, and so it took us some time to build a relationship. And the one we have now, whilst great, is more like a friendly, trusted adult figure they know they can talk to, rather than a third parent. They seem to prefer things this way, so I've never pushed more, and everyone seems happy with the way things are. Anyway, back to my original plan. As I said, I plan to sell the property and put the majority of the funds into a savings account for our son. I do not intend to split this 3 ways between all of the children, as I feel this is an inheritance from a family member who was close to my son, who didn't really have any relationship with my stepchildren. I want to be able to say one day that this came from Grandma X, and I know she'd have been so happy at that. My husband and I don't need the money, own our home, and there will be inheritance in that which my stepchildren are set to receive, along with whatever their mom, her family, may leave. My husband and stepchildren believe I'm being an a-hole for suggesting the money should go to my son, and thinks if one child is getting some, they should all. But in my opinion, if my stepchildren don't have a relationship with Gran, I don't think they should automatically get an equal share of her money. Edit. Thanks for all the replies. Seems I need to stand my ground on this. I'm in the UK. I believe inheritance can be considered a marital asset if it's been mingled in a joint account. The property is in my sole name currently. We've never lived in it. My intention was to sell and put the funds straight into a separate account in trust for my son. Perhaps I may look at putting the whole property in trust for him instead, if that's a better way. I will definitely look to get legal advice anyway. I know a couple of people have commented about whether this leaves my son much better off than my stepchildren. Honestly, it may, yes, but, and it's a big but, I don't actually know what their mother's family intend to leave them, so it may not either. I just don't know. However, I guess I just don't think that it's necessarily a reason to prevent my son from receiving what he's entitled to. Personally, I think it would be really crappy of my stepchildren to blame my son for receiving inheritance from someone they barely knew, just as I would think it crappy of my son to be the same if my stepchildren receive something from their grandparents on their mom's side. Currently, our own situation is that our house is held as tenants, in common with my half going to my son and my husband's half being split 3 ways. Our savings and other assets are then split evenly 3 ways. Not the a-hole. It's inheritance from his mother's side of the family. Will the other children be splitting their mother's and her family's inheritance with your son? No. Not the a-hole. This is an inheritance from your grandmother, his great-grandmother. She didn't have any relationship with your stepchildren and would have wanted to have her money enable her grandchild to have a good start in life. She seems to have been a lovely woman, as she left it to you with no strings attached. But I am pretty certain that she would not actually want 2/3 of her money given to people she has no relationship with. Not the a-hole. The stepchildren have their own grandparents to inherit from. Splitting your son's inheritance with them basically gives them another bonus inheritance line that your son is not going to have, unless their grandparents are also going to cut your son into their wills. My wife led a privileged life. She's not shallow by any means, but volunteers at homeless shelter, does charity work, and does a lot to help whatever cause she believes in at the time. She also does those charity runs or whatever. She's just a little naive. Her parents funded her entire life, even when she moved out. An example could be that she would only drink Voss water rather than tap, or would spend 500 pounds on an outfit she wore once, then donated to charity. They paid for holidays, etc. My wife says she resents this looking back on it, because it left her totally unprepared for life. I will admit she did try a few times to be independent, but it never worked as her parents guilted her into accepting their help. It wasn't without cost. She was expected to get 100% on exams, to take languages and sports. When I met my wife, she fully believes second place is still a loser, and she will only accept first. She's sort of grown up since. My point, even before being cut off, their relationship was transactional and distant. My wife found out she was infertile, and it hit her hard. But we settled on adopting, but her mother is anti-adoption. Long story, won't get into it. Trauma relating to adoption. So when we adopted our daughter, 3, my wife's parents cut her off. It's our daughter's first birthday with us. My wife was going on about how sad she is her parents won't be here, and I said, I have a hard time sympathizing or relating. I didn't receive the same childhood as you, nor did I know my parents. I just meant I can't understand, and I can't be there for her to support her in that. She said, what? So I can't be upset because you had it worse? Then stormed off. She since changed the topic, but still insists I'm fully in the wrong. It was like when I complained to her about my pet dying, and she said, I've never had a pet, but it must be hard. I didn't criticize her for that. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. This isn't the Trauma Olympics. She has a right to express sadness, no matter what they did, and you, as her spouse, shouldn't be invalidating that because you may have had it worse. What she said about your pet was trying to empathize, completely different than, I have a hard time sympathizing and can't be there for you. You're the a-hole. No matter her parents' view on adoption and cutting off their daughter, your wife still has every right to grieve the loss of that relationship and wish things were different on days that are typically family events. You're the a-hole. You don't have to have experienced something yourself in order to have sympathy for someone else. Your wife is sad that her parents cut her off. You told her, in effect, no sympathy for me, I had it worse. In your pet example, your wife essentially said that while she can't understand exactly how you feel, since she has never had a pet, but she acknowledged that it must be hard. That's the opposite of your response to her sadness, when you didn't even acknowledge that it must be hard when your parents cut you off. A little backstory. I absolutely love my in-laws. They have always been so kind to me. I built a special bond with his sister. Her baby boy at the time started calling me Mama, as I was babysitting him most of the time, and she didn't mind. She even called her second daughter after me. Back in my country, I worked a very high-paying job. We both sacrificed everything to save up money for him to get the medical license to work in the UK. He is a doctor, where we finally moved a couple of years ago. When we came to the UK, we were practically penniless. I'm not working at the moment because we have a toddler, and a similar job here would require further education. Instead, I am now doing my MSc in computer science, important for later. Ever since we came to the UK, he has been helping his family and sister. £8,500 in total in less than 3 years, which I was fine with. I don't really understand their reasoning for needing the money, but whatever. A few days ago, his sister called and started with her speech that she really needs to purchase a piece of land. He would be really helping his struggling sister to get her own place, which is BS, as she is living in her own apartment in her in-laws' house, but also, her parents live very near, and they promised her 2 apartments in their house. She doesn't have any money to pay for the land. They barely get by with the inflation. She wants my husband and her parents to buy the land for her, and she would pay them later. I highly doubt it, since she already borrowed thousands of pounds from her parents and my husband, and never returned them. Instead, she renovated her apartment and got new furniture, something I myself can't do. We have been living a below-average life to save for a down payment for a house and a car, and we finally can put in 15%. A huge amount, but we can't get a better offer since we are internationals. He barely has the money for the down payment, not to mention the solicitor and the broker's money. Also, won't we need at least the bare minimum of furniture for the new house? I know it is his money. I know he is helping me with my MSc. I know he is a people pleaser. But I also know he doesn't have decent shoes or clothes because he is saving every penny for the purchase. Don't get me wrong. He is giving me and our baby everything we need. It breaks my heart that he has to work nearly every day to save money, and I am very worried about our future. What if he can't save all that money in 2 months' time? When his sister asked for the money, I was shocked by him nearly begging her to get the land and promising her £2,000. Years of resentment just blow, and I started screaming. Didn't insult him or his family, just stated the obvious in a very unpleasant tone. It has been very tense between us, which is sad since we are always great to each other. It has been several days since I slept peacefully because of the dilemma. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I definitely put my foot down and not let your husband lend her that money. It is just as much yours as it is his, and you should have a say in it. Sister-in-law can find another way to finance this purchase. Not the a-hole at all. Hubby needs to put his nuclear family first right now. Sister is taking advantage of his kindness. He needs to say no. If, when you are in a better position financially and she still wants some land, then he can buy it in his name and consider it an investment for himself. Not the a-hole. If he absolutely wants to do that, buy the land yourselves, in your names. Tell her you'll transfer the title when she has paid you back fully. See how quickly that blows into World War III. Thing is, her kids like you because you have been a free babysitter, and you love her because you've never said no to her and seen the very ugly side that will pop up if you do. If you don't have money for clothes and shoes, you cannot send money to his family. And no, it's not his money, it's his and yours. He couldn't work if you didn't stay home with your child. Have a look at full-time nursery costs. So, for context, I'm 20, and my grandma died about a year ago. She had about $70,000 in a trust fund for her grandkids, which is just me and my brother since my aunt doesn't have kids. The problem is that my grandma made her kids, my dad and my aunt, the executors of the trust. But my dad died about 2 years ago, a year before my grandma died, and the trust was never changed. So now my aunt is the executor of a trust that she gets nothing of. She, not so, subtly asked us to give her half the money in the trust, after saying that she couldn't withdraw any of it herself because the money is only allowed to go to me and my brother. Now, it seems like she's trying to play the victim card, dragging her feet through the entire process of withdrawing money from the trust, since she isn't getting any of it. Here's the thing though, I don't think she deserves any of it. While my grandma was alive, my dad did everything for her. He bought her groceries, he helped her manage everything. He moved her into an assisted living facility when she was too old to live on her own, and he continued to care for her while she was in there, which was often for several hours, several days a week. Meanwhile, my aunt did nothing for her. Anytime my grandma asked my aunt for anything, she would ignore her, refuse to help, and refuse to even talk to her for any extended period of time. My dad died of a blood pressure-induced stroke, and I'm convinced that the stress of taking care of my grandma was a significant contributor to his high blood pressure. In my mind, my dad died for that money while my aunt did nothing. The only thing she did was take care of her for a year until she died, only after my dad died. Also, it's been a year since my grandma died, and we started the process of withdrawing the money from the trust, and it feels like we've hardly even started the process. We've still got loads of paperwork to go through because my aunt is always busy. Am I immature or selfish for not giving her any money from the trust? Not the a-hole. Your grandmother was smart and put it into a trust for you and your brother. Isn't it illegal for your aunt to delay this? You should probably talk to a lawyer and ask if they could do a free 30-minute consult to advise on what to do next. Not the a-hole. Everything about your aunt's conduct is in violation of her duties as executor, and you can probably get her removed on such basis. Find a lawyer. OP, the aunt has likely already tried to withdraw money for herself, and I would watch what documents you sign, because she will likely also try some more shenanigans before all is said and done. Petition the court to remove her as executor and define the reason as misconduct and a conflict of interest. Money can make awful people awfuler. My friend, Alyssa, is having a baby with my fiancé's cousin, Daniel. My fiancé's family are old-fashioned, and having children outside of wedlock isn't something the elders are happy about, even in 2023. I've known them my whole life, so I've seen firsthand how children born out of wedlock are treated differently. The only child they've treated the same is my son, and that's because everybody always knew or assumed I would eventually marry my fiancé, so it wasn't as big of a deal to his parents as it would have been otherwise, but even then, there were some issues we had to work through. I warned Alyssa that her baby is most likely going to be treated differently because she had all of these plans for her daughter's life that relied on the dad's family funding them, which I think won't happen. I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but she accused me of lying and mentioned how my son's grandparents and great-grandmother treated him just as good as the other kids in the family. I told her that was different, and she didn't like my answer when I explained how it was. We've been fighting for the last week, and I'm wondering if I was an a-hole. Edit. I warned her so she doesn't get her hopes up and end up hurt once her baby is born and things aren't how she expects them to be. Daniel is engaged already. He's in an open relationship, so he won't marry her. I don't think she should have termination unless she wants one. You're the a-hole. I was with you until you brought up the fact that they treat your child, born out of wedlock, just fine. And you still aren't actually part of the family because he hasn't married you. Since it's been long enough that you know they treat your child fine. Sounds like a really long engagement. Wow, you're the a-hole. Not the a-hole. You have first-hand knowledge of how they treat kids. You know what the family is like. She's delusional to assume her child would get the same treatment. You've said what you said. Now let it go. It's now time for her to see for herself. It's also quite entitled of her to depend on other people's money to support her child. Not the a-hole. She's having a child with someone she's not in a relationship with and who's engaged to someone else. Of course, they won't treat her as family and the child as legitimate. Even if you don't subscribe to the idea of legitimate children, you don't have to give fund money to the woman who's not in a relationship with your son.